I want to highlight some research that describes what you really need to know about early intervention to prevent cognitive decline. It's a paper by Carolina Abulafia from Argentina and her team, and they describe this term, maybe new to you, load and offload. And this is the relationship between cognitive and sleep wake variables in asymptomatic offspring of patients with late onset Alzheimer's disease. Load means late onset Alzheimer's disease, or really any neurodegenerative disease. Offload are the middle aged offspring of patients with load, and that's around 54 years old, 53 and something. Over 99% of cases of Alzheimer's disease are late onset. The initial cognitive symptoms usually appear after 65 years of age. Familial or early onset Alzheimer's disease cases result from a fairly rare autosomal dominant and account for less than 1% of all cases. See that? 99% of cases. Early neuropathological changes characteristic of load involve brainstem and limbic structures that regulate neurovegetative functions, including our sleep wake rhythm, our sleep wake cycle. They hypothesized that cognitively asymptomatic, totally normal, middle aged offspring of patients with load, offload, would display a series of circadian rhythm abnormalities prior to the onset of objective cognitive alterations or impairment. Do you see that? So they tested 31 children, average age of 54, of patients with load, offload, and 19 healthy individuals without any family history of Alzheimer's disease as their control group. The basic tests of cognitive function, as well as measures of sleep-wake rhythm, cardiac, autonomic function, and body temperature were measured. Okay, so 31 children of load, offload, the basic tests of cognitive function, sleep-wake rhythm, cardiac, autonomic function, and body temperature. Unexpectedly, offload displayed subtle but significant deficits in verbal episodic memory and language skills. While all the participants had results within the normal range, they were low and they had deficits. The cognitive performance in offload was associated with a series of cardiac autonomic sleep wake variables. Specifically, indicators of greater sympathetic activity at night were related to poorer cognition, things that we've been talking about for some time now. The main findings also were that lower performance in offload compared to healthy controls and measures of verbal memory and language, even though performances in both groups fell within the normal range. And these delayed phases of circadian rhythm of body temperature in these offspring and the presence of a relationship between sleep difficulties and verbal memory in the offload people. So cognition was connected to sleep. And overall HRV, decreased night-day differences in HRV, and the increased sympathovagal balance at night, all related to decreased verbal memory in the offload. So the present relationship between indicators of healthy circadian and neurovegetative function and cognitive abilities, good brain and offloads, showed that the sleep characteristics are associated with the same changes in cognition typical of Alzheimer's disease. And the onset of these a decade prior to the onset of usual cognitive symptoms. So the potential link between abnormal sleep-wake variations and poor cognition in the present sample of these offload people was reduced parasympathetic activity, decreased sleep quality, which in turn predicts cognitive decline, and supports that the link may be also an increased susceptibility to stress in the offspring. And these findings are unexpected given the average age was around 54 years, approximately 1 decade prior to the age of expected onset of symptoms. The problems of sleep, the problems of HRV, and the cognitive decline 10 years prior. What about when you add caregiving for a family member who's getting into their later years? That just increases the stress, and these are why these problems are evident and become more prominent. I want to point out in our book and in our coaching program, these are the things that we address before symptoms show up. Even though they may be there, they're not being addressed. And we look at showing that in our clients that we coach, using our Pro Neural program, we have increased heart rate variability by 62%, decreased resting heart rate by 22%, that's decreased sympathetic tone, and a better HRV balance score of about 100%. So significant changes in these quote unquote normal people. But they may have brain deficits. We also improve sleep quite regularly. Like, for example, increase deep sleep by 60%, decreased restlessness, more restful sleep by 23%, and a decreased light sleep percentage, which really is not important, but more relaxed because we're increasing the deep sleep, the restorative sleep that you have. I want to point out that we review this quite extensively in our book, and we're a very caregiver centric company. We want the caregivers to get better too because they are at risk for sleep problems, cognitive decline, and abnormal cardiac and cognitive function. This is what you really need to know.